the initial idea goes back to a visit that I was immensely excited and proud to host at Belvedere when Nadia came a couple of months ago with you, John, to see us at the Belvedere, to see the artwork in the first place. And Simon was there, Simon brought us together, and we mentioned we already had started developing this conference. And you, Nadia, mentioned a book that had been published about the correspondence of the both of you while you were in prison, which lasted, as you might know, for 2 years until Nadia was released in late at the end of 2013. So you have exchanged letters, and during this conference we have already heard a lot about how important the exchange of letters, a correspondence, is for inmates, being able to exchange ideas. And actually in one of her first letters, when you, Slavoj, asked Nadia about the prison, like how is it there? And I'm sure it must be terrible. Nadia is totally, I was so impressed by reading this, is totally cool, saying don't waste your time on asking these questions. It's like we have more important things to discuss. And this is what you do, and it's basically, or not basically, it's a huge discussion about global capitalism, options of resistance, and I would say the relation between totalitarianism and capitalism. And when I read it recently, I was totally amazed how actual it still sounds. And so I want to maybe ask you first, do you still have it in mind? What were the big issues in your exchange?
You ask me or her?
Whoever
I have a memory
first.
of a goldfish, so I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember it was very exciting. Well, I was ecstatic when Slavoj wrote us for the first time. And then it went on. And one of the things, so the reason why I don't want to talk about prison conditions, if you write to a political prisoner, don't waste your time on asking them how are they doing or how are the prison conditions, because everything is going to be cut by the censor. What I really appreciated that Slavoj didn't just pity me, which I hate, and none of the prisoners want that shit. They want you to treat them as equal. And this is what you want from an artist, intellectual who writes to you in jail, to really be interested in what you have to say, and that's what Slavoj did. So it was awesome.
I want quickly to reply to this, to refer to that point that you mentioned. This, your reply to my, I now openly admit it, not so much de facto, brutally. It was the way male chauvinism works today. Officially, you are kind. Oh, my darling, are you in trouble and so on. But there is such deep patronizing stance beneath it, no? And this was for me the, not personal, but maybe the crucial intersubjective moment where you had the right to do it. I was comfortably at my home writing other books, doing this, but you had to remind us, like the message for me was so fundamental, like, sorry for this obscene metaphor, but I like it. You caught me with my pants down, in the sense of how I subtly wanted to introduce, this pathetic compassion, oh, poor you, but the message was, poor woman, there in prison, I must treat you carefully, are you even able, like the implication, I'm bringing them out. Women in general have problems with thinking, and in prison it must be even worse, no? And this was such a sobering moment. But you know, that's the dialectic. Some people hate it, that if I were to say this, like, you are in prison, I don't care if they rape you there or whatsoever, we should talk theory, it would be only you were able to say this, no? And now I will say something that amuses me so much. We live in male chauvinist world. So when the book appeared, no, of course, you were, sorry, trigger warning, male chauvinist. You still are, but you were quite beautiful and so on. And I heard, as you can imagine, all the time this male chauvinist, do you plan afterwards to seduce her? Did anything happen with you? Sorry, maybe, but I met her the first time today, and her husband, you introduced me, so no chances. But now, seriously, what I want to say is that what impressed me is that, and I will in 2 minutes go to that, how if you just go quickly through that book, you will see that really it's not this patronizing debate of compassion, you know, like, I will write, this must be horrible, you write me some details and so on, and then I cry even more or whatsoever. We really did what you said. And it's really, we can move later to this serious theoretical debate, because the uniqueness of Pussy-Riot for me was, it wasn't just, I was very careful living in a, under triple quotation marks, especially today, free world, you know. I noticed how your acts were, I think, and I wonder if you agree with it, they were deeply misread as just some kind of, you know, postmodern provocation. Oh, beautiful half-naked women dance in the church and so on. And they didn't even notice, I heard this from some of your friends when I was in Moscow, where you were in holiday in some place up there. They told me this is crucial, that when you were doing that under triple quotation mark, okay, I will say performance, I don't like the term provocation, it's totally wrong. Your words were not meant as an act of anti-religion. Wasn't one of your words like, put, no, to that, who is your high religious chief, metropolitan, whatever? You addressed him, think more about God and less about obeying Putin or something like that. You see, this moment...
We said, bitch, you'd better listen to God instead of Putin.
You see, this was kind of a... So, you know, now this is a very personal notification. It's so important today. Poetry is... Because poetry is powerful today, and I don't mean poetry in this narrow sense, but poetry in the basic sense of what? It's much more effective than you may think, and now I will provoke you and others. I noticed how, and maybe they are right, many so-called, I don't like the term, ordinary people, or even the most evil dictators, have a strange respect, almost superstition of poetry. For example, let's go to the top of evil, Stalin. Do you know that when Osip Mandelstam wrote, frankly, a pretty vulgar poem, the first one from late 20s, mocking Stalin that he, out of his nose, there is hair and he has sticky, ugly fingers and so on. And of course, KGB immediately made an arrest, blah, blah. And Stalin said, no, how do you call this? You put him to another city.
You're expelled to another city?
Yeah, just for 2 years. This is enough let him alone. And this even led to the famous phone call from Stalin to Pasternak, ist man der Stamm. So even
Bulgakov too. He left
Sorry?
Bulgakov.
Yeah, so no, this is not, don't misunderstand me. Now, I'm not trying to make the point, oh, Comrade Stalin was nonetheless great. What I'm saying is that...
You always make this point.
Yeah. Now you are bringing out my male chauvinism. You see, this is if you admit women as actual partners, you know, you get this back. Sorry. You get this from me. But no, quite seriously, what I'm saying is that, you know, my experiences with poetry are not just good. Don't forget my own, as beloved President Trump said years ago, shithole of a country, ex-Yugoslavia, Slovenia. Remember, and I agree with this, that Radovan Karadzic sits in prison, and people tend to forget this, but originally he was a quite respected poet. And then I looked around a little bit in Rwanda. Remember that terrifying genocidal war, Tutus Hutsit? There was a poet behind it. Take all the big modernist poets, not just Ezra Pound, William Butler Yeats. You know what saved him? Early death. He was already planning a big trip to Germany where Hitler would have received him and Goebbels would... like to make just this brief theoretical point that I often make. The problem is common decency, which I, in my old age, admire more and more. Like, let's say some soldier orders me to, I like to be concrete, to stab you with a knife and pick out your eyes. Imagine details, no? I am still, although I doubt sometimes, half a decent person. So I need a very strong, sacred, religious, mythic, nationalist message, which tells me, and both Stalinists and Nazis knew this. The true ideological problem is this always remainder of a common decency in people and shame, and how to enable them to overcome this. The solution today, predominant, is a strong religious fundamentalist matter and so on, which is why for some time, I must admit it, I was distrustful of poets as such. But what I discovered with Pussy-Riot is what you were doing. I will stop the first round so that I don't talk all the time, but I will give you a metaphor. Are you too young, or do you remember maybe seeing when I was young, that's in pre-Christian era almost, it was shown on our TV, some, you know, these short cartoons that you show before main news, a Russian one about a rabbit, Zayets, no? Where a rabbit got in some adventure, and at the end he wins, but there is then a final surprise. And the rabbit looks into the camera and says, "Nu pagadi."
Yeah.
And you were doing this. You were that "Nu pagadi." It was not a big message, but you know, a gesture to make you think.
What about Tom and Jerry?
No. Tom and Jerry I like I have theory. Tom and Jerry, what I like is another reason, Tom and Jerry, which is a big lesson of materialism. You know how Tom walks above, approaches a precipice and walks, goes on walking.
And he doesn't notice it.
No, but doesn't fall down. Yeah, only when he looks down, it falls down. Maybe your message was just also, hey, look down, so that they will. No, but more seriously, what I admired so much, and that's very difficult to do, and your echo, the fact that you were in prison and so on, demonstrates this. You know, a true act, an effective performance, which really changes things, shouldn't be just a simple, although that is also necessary, stating the facts. You must give a very specific twist, permit me to conclude with the story. I was not a great dissident. I was just jobless for a couple of years, but I survived it. I don't... I remember, I'm sorry if some of you know this story, when I was young, I was member of the committee of some student journal, late 60s, early 70s, which was kind of a still tolerated half dissident. And there were elections, and although Yugoslavia was not as bad as Soviet Union, so the party didn't get 99%, they were satisfied with like 80 to 85% progress. No? But so we sat and asked ourselves, what should we do? There are some radical dissidents who said, let's go to the end. Let's write these elections were a fake. And we, more intelligent ones, protested. We said, first, everybody knows this. We will appear stupid, you know. And second thing, the issue of our weekly journal would just be confiscated. There would be no effect. So, not me, one of us had an ingenious idea. What if we treat the elections as if they were really free? So we published an issue with a big title, latest results. It looks that communists will remain in power, and so on. The party was so embarrassed that they called us to Central Committee. This was, Slovenia is again a small country, this wasn't a big deal, and shouted at us, how dare you? And we just repeated a simple story, which was, sorry, but are you implying that these were not free elections? You claim you were, so we just stated that you won democratically, blah, blah. Tell us why not. And the guy, I still remember him, an older, slightly overweight, red-faced guy, just shouted at us, don't fuck with me. You know very well what I mean. And we asked him, okay, tell us what do you mean? No, he said, don't, you know, this was an act to make them ashamed, to make the lie public, not directly. And I think you developed a masterful approach here. Second thing that is extremely important, I will stop immediately if you are stupid enough to believe me, is that people talk a lot about feminism, but you, and I would like to mention another example. Do you remember a year or two ago, no, two already, this is for me true feminism, in Iran, the murder of that Maxas Kurdish girl, this is what we're missing in the West. What was a protest feminist against a woman killed for not being properly covered, almost caused a mega revolution. The whole Iran, men and so on, identified with. I think so. I think you also, you and Iranians and others, are giving us in the West a lesson of how actual effective feminism should look today. Not this stupid upper middle class, especially American way of, let's just not touch real problems of real woman. Let's debate is he, she, or they, or how, all that stuff. But you know, a woman, as you know from prison, is a material being. Just imagine vulgar, they are not vulgar, facts like you have a menstruation period, I don't. Being a mother is for you as a woman something totally different. How does this affect your daily struggles and so on? So it's not that Western arrogant approach, we in the West already know it and we will teach you. No, we have to learn from you. And really, the last point, this is why I think that you know, some stupid leftists often said, but you in the East generally, for us it's all the same bullshit, Poland, Czech, blah, blah, Hungary, you are primitive, you believe too much in Western values. I claim, no, Western values, I admit it, are so-so. freedom means one thing, for Donald Trump one thing, but when you evoke social freedom and human rights and so on, you don't simply copy the West. You sometimes even project onto the West emancipatory potential, which is basically part of, I would even say, socialist tradition. For example, it's very interesting to follow Solidarność. People tend to forget that at the beginning these were Trotskyist leftists. It was Committee for the Defense of the Workers' Right, which once things were already moving, it was appropriated by Catholic Church and the New Right. So in this sense, now I'm saying without hypocrisy, in this sense, I was proud to co-wrote a book with you because it was, for me, living my, I admit it, relatively comfortable life, although not because I was so bright, I was incredibly lucky. You know what saved me? The communist hardline took over in 72, 73, and this was the last Indian summer of communism. So I couldn't get a job. For 5 years, I was unemployed. And then I got a marginal job on some research institute. This saved me. Because there, it was pure sinecure. They didn't want me to have any contact with students. So without communist oppression, I would have been some stupid unknown professor in Ljubljana. Now I'm slightly above that. So again, just to conclude now, really, what I admire in you is that, yeah, okay, what I will do now is stop. It's you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for intervening, which should have been my job. So Nadia, yeah, now of course now we are very curious how Slavoj's it was a praise of your work with Pussy-Riot among many other ideas and stories, but how does that resonate with you? Do you, how would you describe your approach of political work as a poetic work? Maybe you also talked very interesting about the role of the poet.
I think Slavoj just did it to provoke the feminist riot, so it was a conscious performance done by him, hijacking the microphone. I love it your approach with the student newspaper. We had a previous collective before Pussy-Riot. It was called Vaina, war in Russian, against institutions, cultural institutions, conservative government. And we, do you remember Medvedev, the president? He got elected after Putin because he was like Putin's puppet.
Naked on screen.
But naked was a different time. You don't look at those pictures. No, we came with a portrait of Medvedev and put it in police stations. And our job was exactly what you're describing. We were better at performing the orders of the government than the cops themselves. And they had exactly the same reaction. We came with a huge portrait. We said, how can you try to get rid of us? How can you tell us to fuck off and leave the building when it's all happening under the face of your great leader who you should be praising? What are we doing wrong? And they said, what are you doing wrong? You know exactly what you're doing wrong. And we're like, no, we're just kids from the school. We came with an open heart. We came with the cake, we came with the tea, we invited them to participate in the celebration, and instead they were just throwing the cake at us and we were acting very innocently. But my mom told me that I had to come here to celebrate with you. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Here, don't be afraid, not another.
And they couldn't really beat us. It was in the middle of this, cops in Russia were beating activists like nothing. So, but they couldn't really do any physical violence because we were coming from the ruling party.
Here in Yugoslavia, maybe those in power were a little bit more, I don't like to say intelligent, but manipulative in a different way, they would have joined the party, just to dilute it, you know. Which is why, okay, I will not get lost into this. Sorry, stop, you didn't finish. Go on.
Well, I don't know what to say about poetry. I mean, I think your read of poetry was like rather that it usually justifies the exclusion of people, right?
I'm saying about how actual poetry can work. And I even wrote a text, very problematic, where the title is something like No Ethnic Cleansing Without Poetry. I mean, this was a conscious provocation, and I made it clear, not all poets. But can I ask you a Russian question? Would you agree or not? I'm here much more refined than it may appear with my occasional vulgarity. I have problems with some Russian big poets, even if they are dissidents, who are, for me, a little bit too self-conscious and so on. For example, if you ask me, Anna Akhmatova, Osip and Nadezhda Maldelstam, Marina Tsvetaeva, much more. I don't like people like Akhmatova or Solzhenitsyn who consciously treat themselves as big historical figures and so on. Am I going too far here? How do you stand towards this?
No, I agree. Well, I don't read poetry. So when we started Pussy-Riot, it was a big problem actually, because we came up with an idea of making Pussy-Riot a night before we were about to read a lecture about the group. So we needed to create a few songs, like the visual idea of it. So we had to create poetry because song, it basically is poetry, but I never read poets. I just don't like it. I read only Mayakovsky because he looked cute and had big shoulders, and I loved the entire story with Lila Brick and everything. So I always wanted to be his lover. But Mayakovsky, yes. And yeah, I just like prose, and I mostly read nonfiction. But in your question, you know, if I choose Shalamov or Solzhenitsyn, obviously Shalamov. He is just much more detail-oriented. And yeah, I don't like people who are very pompous and think too much about themselves. It's just annoying, right? It's annoying.
So, in the book, you have been discussing a resistance or a fight against global capitalism, and there was a conversation, or there was a certain disagreement about universalization. You were talking, Slavoj, you were talking about the universal global capitalism, while you, Nadia, were responding and insisting on specific differences. So you were saying like the fight has to be different in every country, even every state. And if I think of Russia now, because yeah, it's our specific subject, I wonder, you didn't talk, as I remember, you didn't talk too much about the role of the prison and the imprisonment, the detention centers in this whole setting about an authoritarian state who is basically interested in developing its specific form of capitalism, even maybe a kind of turbo capitalism, like you even more stressed China as an example. So we have an
You mean with the prisoners' labor?
No, I mean now the overall picture. But my question is going to ask what role does the detention center, the prison, so to say, have in all this? Maybe also, why is it necessary to send artists, poets, playwrights to prison, and with these draconic sentences? Like what everyone notices when you have been sentenced to 2 years, now the usual sentence that we read about is 6 years, 7 years, so yeah, it gets worse and worse. But what function for the ruling has this has the detention center in their idea of the system, or their ideal even?
Well, I think artists can be just are a little bit more loud than everyone else, so that's why they have to be shut down the first. So let's say for like one artist can be as loud as thousands of people at times. I don't know, in case of Taylor Swift, it would be much more. So I think if Trump could imprison Taylor Swift, he would definitely do that. So I think art is a great amplifier, and it helps you to transcend all sorts of boundaries, linguistic boundaries, cultural boundaries. You have an image or you have a song, and it's like people more or less understand what's going on. They looked at Pussy-Riot, and most of the people who supported us all around the world didn't know Russian, so they didn't want to even know what exactly we were saying. It didn't matter. It was actually terrible poetry, so it's good that nobody knew. But we had the feminist flag, we had this colorful clothes, and everyone could kind of more or less say what we were standing up for. And I think, an artist is a terrible creature who can poison people's minds. I mean, artists and philosophers also. I mean, why Socrates was poisoned with cicuta, because he was corrupting young people's minds. And I think the same problem with us.
I deeply agree. I'm not justifying the poisoning, but my good friend with whom I have some problems, Alain Badiou, even defined, he said philosophy is an instrument to corrupt young people. But then he went on, why? Because it already Socrates, important figure, we should return to him. You know, this is what we need more than ever today. He didn't, like pre-Socratic, just ask, was there first water or what? He made this hermeneutic turn and ask, okay, you talk about freedom. What is freedom? You talk about value. What is value? That's where we live today, where the basic terms that we used, human rights, democracy, freedom, they in themselves don't mean, they have no clear meaning. All sides can appropriate them. Look at people's regime, republic, not monarchy, and democracy. There is a country which is maybe most oppressive in the world now, and it's called Democratic Popular Republic of Korea. It has all three elements. So that's why philosophers are needed. No, we are not geniuses. We will not provide solutions. But just to, this in Brechtian sense, referendum, to make you strange the world in which you live.
Be annoying.
Yeah, to be absolutely. No, I don't believe in this falsely romantic poetry. No, poetry should be something that gives you bad dreams. You awaken in the middle of the night and a verse annoys you. You cannot get it out of your mind because it touches some traumatic point in you. But now, can I do what I am dreaming of for literally 2 decades? Can I touch directly the point? No. Oh my God. I know. I'm a dirty guy, and then people interpret everything as, no, I'm serious. You know, the misunderstanding was, no, it's too humiliating world. The real tension, theoretical, was that, but I will, of course, not only allow, but solicit you to reply. My vision is this one. Provocation, clownish, crazy behavior didn't, in the last decade or more, right-wing took this over. If you can imagine, that's my point, all neoconservatives are, against postmodernism, historicism, relativism. Sorry, if you look at Donald Trump as a person, although he poses as advocate of Christian fundamentalism, can you imagine a more obscene, relativist, postmodern person? That's the ethical fiasco. The most depressing news that I read recently is how researchers show, you remember how before the last elections, Trump was systematically caught not only using dirty words, but lying. You know that this helped him. You know why? Because it was perceived, it's nightmare, as his sincerity. Like, Democrats are all well prepared, but Trump really speaks what he thinks. Even talking about traditional revolution, if by revolution we mean thousands of people attacking the seat of power, sorry, Trumpists did. So from this point, now I'm speaking as a general who is wise after the battle, no? You praise in your replies to me, which term do you use, urodivy or what, from the Russian?
The whole
this kind of,
tricksters.
I see your point, and it's still important as estrangement. But don't you think that we should be more careful here, because this comedic, subversive stuff and so on is so appropriated by today's right wing that my point is, and I think you, not you, but your group, succeeded in it, how to hit those in power, not just with empty provocations, but with a stance which, although it's provocative, sorry, somehow brings out our, I'm not afraid to say, common decency and shame. I think, a guy, maybe he's even here, one of good Austrians, not many, Robert Faller, he wrote a book on shame where he drew attention to the basic paradox of shame. If you, no, I will be fair, if I do something shameful, vulgar, it's not just that you will say shame on you. You will feel ashamed. You will also, that's the paradox of shame. You will feel ashamed on behalf of the public. Like, this doesn't belong to public space.
But that's why we came to the church, to take this place of a person who talks to them about being, like, to everyone, including the president and the patriarch, about being decent people. We came and talked directly to God, or wherever, to Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
And we took the position of the patriarch, of the priest, and we said, we're actually expelling you from the church, like Jesus did with the people who were selling shit in the church, right? So, yeah, I mean, like, it's scary that Trump and Putin in a way are taking our place. But when I got out of jail, it was crazy. I had to start wearing suits and, like little tuxedos, because I felt like punk clothes doesn't work anymore. Because I felt Putin was breaking so many rules. At the time he invaded Ukraine, and it was completely unthinkable. It was 2014. We thought that 21st century is going to be peaceful, prosperous time when everyone is going to get healthcare, education, we're going to live forever, we're going to treat all deadly diseases, and this fucking clown invades a neighboring country like this last century never existed.
If I may, just, and then I promise I leave you the final, whatever we have, 20 minutes or what. Would you know what I especially admire is your engagement for Ukraine, but I would like to make two provocative points and see if you agree with them. First one is, I nonetheless, with all my support of Ukraine, have a problem with them. First, when they buy this story that it's Western spirit world against Russia. And they even now prohibit that all Russian, even historical Tchaikovsky, also Tchaikovsky maybe should be prohibited, but it's kids. But great music, and aren't they giving these hardline Ukrainians to Putin too much? Now Putin can pose as a representative of the great culture. Second thing that so this is one mistake that among others that Ukrainians are making. Second thing, can you help me in this enigma? I don't get it how many so-called leftists obey this dogma. If somebody resists NATO, because NATO is the supreme evil, he must be somehow good. So Ukrainians are really having a proxy war for NATO against Russia. Sorry, first, Ukrainians are just deadly scared. Because, you know, their choice is not peace or war. Putin makes this clear. For him, Ukrainians don't exist as a nation. Second thing, and here I come to you. What I especially admire you is that in you, not just you, but your gang, no, family, mafia, whatever you want. Yeah, that you do this. I hope I'm not misinterpreting you, from a clearly leftist position, which is so obvious. Look, my God, I have many critics of Lenin, I'm not crazy. But do you remember, I repeat this all the time, more than 2 years ago, when in two speeches, I think 21st and 23rd of February, when Putin announced invasion, he critically mentioned in each speech only one name, Lenin. He said Ukraine should be called Ukraina Vladimira Ilyich Lenina. He put all the blame on Lenin. It was, and so on. I will not go into, but what I'm saying is that here Russia should be proud and Bolshevik in spite of all. Under Tsarism, Ukrainian language was not a literal language, it was prohibited. It was the Bolsheviks in the 1920s who established Ukrainian with dictionaries and so on as a literary language. So Putin is not any kind of return to Soviet Union. He says this repeatedly. His dream is, without October Revolution, Russia would be on the winning side of the World War I and would expand even more, and so on and so on. So again, I really appreciate you for this, because I'm getting now so much hate mail, including physical threats. Like, how can you, a self-proclaimed leftist, support Ukraine? How do you survive this, or you don't get the same tension?
I get it. Well, I just ask people, what do you propose? Like, do you have Ukrainian friends? I ask them. And they say, yeah, most likely I do. And like, do you want them to be bombed? And then they don't know what to answer.
No, my friends know this, but they said they are bombed because the West, through Ukraine, is provoking Russia and is consciously sacrificing total stupidity, no, and is consciously sacrificing.
I'm just not listening to this shit. And then it's just blah, blah.
I wanted also to ignore it, but I don't know how it is here in Österreich, but in my part of the world, in the West, I get more and more this as if Ukrainians are some kind of, crazy fanatics who want world war and nuclear war. But sorry, Russia is all the time making nuclear threats. By Russia, I mean not Russians, but Putin. So I think that, and what really makes me afraid, would you agree with this? And then I will, for once, keep my word and really shut up. That the most horrible thing is that because of this, there is now some kind of a strange solidarity, as if Russia is defending third world against imperialist colonialism in the same way as Palestinians are.
That's how Putin
so Russia, Palestine,
himself.
both are. No, and this parallel, which unfortunately even Zelensky used once, Israel is like Ukraine. No, it's not. If this version will prevail, I say this in a very pathetic way, it will be the end of world as we know it. I really don't shut up. Please.
no, that is...
And we all look at you so that you will be embarrassed.
No, don't look at me. Well, let's, at some point of tonight, I just want to ask you, what do you think we can do to cure the left? Because it was just, so I've been a leftist my entire life. At some point, I realized that I have nothing in common with most of the people who I see around myself, but I still refuse to move elsewhere. I mean, like, what am I going to go, like, join Andrew Tate? I could. He'll meet me with open arms. Trump likes hot Slavic women, but I still want to be with the leftists. They don't want to be with me. They think I'm a part of NATO. They think I'm paid by Hillary Clinton to destroy Russia. And they agree with the Russian propaganda in these crazy tropes. So I feel like the leftists a little bit are just like drinking some sort of poison that we need to somehow get out of their system, or otherwise right-wing people are going to keep winning everywhere.
I mean, I would say we are in at least I find myself in quite a confused situation now. What you say, Slava, is, I mean, you've asked, and how is it in Austria? Wie ist es in Österreich? I would say in Austria, you're talking about the left, so the leftists. I find that in Austria, they somehow got lost along the way. I don't see any. And the right wing, to the extreme right, they have captured what you described as the attitude of the lefts. They express solidarity with Russia, and they are pro-Russia. So it seems, very confusing to say the least. But I don't hear any real left. You at one point, you say in the book that the real lefts today have to be conservative. And I thought you had a point in this, and as said, I don't see them in Austria really.
No, okay. You know why Austria interests me? Probably I used it 4 or 5 times. I will be very short. Everybody should probably know it, but it's one of my favorite. It's, of course, apocryphal. It's a joke, but wonderful. It's a joke in the middle of the World War I. There is an exchange of telegrams between Berlin and Vienna here. From Berlin, the telegram says, with us, situation is serious but not yet catastrophic. The Austrians answer with us, the situation is catastrophic but not serious. Unfortunately, Austria is winning. We are in a catastrophe, ecologically, socio-politically, and so on, but we simply don't treat this as serious.
Shall we give the last word to you, Nadia? That would be fitting, no? I think so. Although that was quite catastrophic, but not serious.
Well, I think one of the ways out is to start dreaming again. I really like dreaming. Yeah, I really like the idea of radical political imagination. And, you know, to conclude our conversation about the left, it feels a little bit off. It feels just like the revolutionary spirit of 1968 is currently hijacked by the right. So one of my current projects is to make this like very childish and fairy tale-ish and beautiful and naive series of vision for the future. Talking about all the catastrophes that we find ourselves in. How can we solve the catastrophe, ecological catastrophe? And things like, they say money don't grow on trees, so I want to imagine the world where money actually do grow on trees. So I think we lost the time perspective a bit, so that's why we just, well, leftists are known for for loving to debate with one another or throw shit at each other. But I think when you don't have this common goal or vision, it's really the only thing that is left, only to argue with each other. But once you have this carrot in front of you, you realize that there is a common enemy, or at least global problems that it's not even like it's not even a question if we have to solve them. We must solve them in order for humanity to survive. And it's a very serious question. So I think it's the role of artists and the role of philosophers and a role of politicians that are completely failing at to dangle this carrot in front of the people, to realize that we all have common shared interests.
Thank you so much, both of you. Nadia, Slavoj, thank you. But at the end, not completely, because as said, there will be wine and then bread outside, and I hope you stay with us for
There is only bread. It's awesome. I love it. But let's not forget the main topic of today's conversation. Look,
Austrians treat us Slavs, you know, for us old.
exactly.
You have it also here in the afternoon when bread gets old, you get it for half price, you know. Probably you bought that bread for us.
You guys write mails to prisoners, and like one thing that we talked with Simon about, we spoke about how wonderful would it be to realize some unrealized projects by prisoners, by us being here. So let's say Krisevich is going to send us, I want to build like a giant ass cathedral in the middle of Vienna, and we get the exact instructions from him. And I think that's the biggest support, again, like what we had with Slavoj. He treated me as equal, even though he didn't want to do it in the beginning, but like treating them as equals and really listening to what they have to say without paternalizing.
Yeah, thank you.
You know why I treated you as equal? Because I was afraid of you. I discovered that you are bright. You know, and that was the end of the game for me. My God, I cannot just patronize you.
So I thank you both, and thank you, Nadia, for bringing back or closing the circle. I just want to add in a very practical sense, or as a guideline, we have been talking a lot about writing letters to prisoners and also donating money, which is also needed very strongly. And it's not difficult to find addresses. I wanna mention Memorial. Irina Sherbakova, one of the founders, did a lecture in the last conference. So just Google it, and there are a few very great and reliable organizations who will facilitate this, both donations and letters.
A practical point, sorry, not my philosophy again. But listen, my situation is this one. I have some money with me. And tomorrow I will forget about it. I'm too lazy to Google. Is there a place to buy something to do it here, now? To get rid of a little bit of money. Because I think this is true, let's be frank, for many of you.
We can organize the box, yes.
But not in a Russian way, not just because I read that in Russia when they have this charity for children dying, that if 10% gets to the target, it's success, you know. So you can do something. Yes. Okay. And please, you also do it. Because it's true, then tomorrow you are busy, you forget.
No, you just mentioned something about being afraid of me, so I think I really
in a good sense.
No, it's awesome. Ever since, in the last 10 years, I became a dominatrix, so I figured that it's like really, like a lot of men really loved love to be afraid.
Yeah, but you are more evil. You are not just a dominatrix. A normal masochist likes a dominatrix whom he controls. He tells her, whip me in this way and so on. What makes me afraid of you is you are like, no, you are a dominatrix who also wants to control the rules, you know.
Of course, that's the fun.
As you see, you know, now I will make, sorry, to conclude, you can add, a real important point. This may seem obscene to you, but you know, this is what makes us friends. In some too stiff cancel culture circles, they will find reasons that we are playing the clownish game of big capital, whatever. No, I think that without this elementary sense of irony and so on, left will not survive.